When I say the word pantry, the first thing that comes to your mind is probably food. But there are some other really important items you're going to want to make sure to add to your emergency pantry stockpile. The current economic conditions have everybody just a little bit on edge. We've talked a lot in the past month on the channel about possible interruptions in the power supply this summer. We've talked about the problems with the food chain and getting items from point A to point B. And although the first thing that might come to your mind is indeed your food supply, there are some other items that we think you really ought to consider having on hand. These are non-edibles. Specifically in this video, we're going to cover 60 of them. For convenience sake, we've sort of divided the list up into cooking, personal care, cleaning, first aid, and just some general things we think you might want to have on hand. All of these items are inexpensive and they're smaller items that you can have in your pantry. Our pantry has two sections. There's an emergency pantry section, which has food in it. It's also like our working pantry where, you know, we might have 5 pounds of sugar because we're going to go through 5 pounds of sugar. But then we might have a little bit larger stockpile of sugar, right? And that would be considered more of our emergency stockpile of sugar. Then we also have a completely separate section that's a little bit further over where we keep some first aid items, some household items, personal care items. Those are the items we're going to talk about today.
In case you're new to the channel, I'm Larry.
And I'm Hope.
And we're from Under the Median, where every week we bring you videos on frugality, practical frugality.
And something else different. This is not our usual studio. So we had a graduation party for our third son, Daniel, who graduated last week. His open house party was on Friday, and we had this huge, like, balloon arch. This was the selfie area. We're going to show you what it looked like. So on Friday, our entire basement was filled with happy young people taking selfies in the selfie booth, and we left the balloons up. We decided on the spur of the moment, that was great. Well, we already had the room completely rearranged that we would strip every single thing out of our old studio area, and we would clean it out and use that area for something else. So literally the other half of this room, I'm telling you all, it looks like, I don't know, some sort of a hurricane, some natural disaster clearly happened to that side of the room where we usually actually videotape the videos. So that's why we had to move over to this area. Now, if you tune in like for our Thursday video and we're still sitting here, you'll know that we have not made enough progress on that half of the room to move the studio back over to where it actually belongs.
But this is kind of where we started. So we had a little different table, but it's kind of nostalgic, I think, to be back over here. We just don't, we have Robbie the robot, but he's over a little farther. So anyway.
Wait, Robbie's still here. Hold Robbie up so they can see Robbie.
Oh yeah. Robbie.
There you go.
Robbie is.
Robbie. He's still with us, guys.
Oh my gosh, that goes on forever.
Okay. Let's talk about 60 items that you may want to have on hand. These are inexpensive items. Remember, these can be small things that you're going to put in your pantry alongside of your food items. Of course, when we start talking about things like soap, you don't want soap right next to an item that's porous, like right next to the sugar or something.
Well, you don't want soap soup.
Well, you don't want something to wind up smelling and tasting like soap. So you want to have these items a little ways away from your food items. Okay, let's get started. Cooking. Let's talk about cooking first. First couple of items we're going to talk about cooking aren't necessarily like items you're going to have in your pantry, but I wanted to throw them in here anyway because they seem kind of important. Here's the first one. Ladies, tell me if you agree. And guys, I bet there's some guys that watch that actually are really good cooks. Cast iron skillet. First of all, they're indestructible. And secondly, you can use them literally anywhere that you wind up having to cook. If you wind up having to build a fire in your backyard and cook over it, you can use cast iron to do that. Another cast iron thing you might want to have on hand is a Dutch oven. You can cook in it, you can bake in it, you can bury it in coals, you can do anything to a cast iron Dutch oven.
Now correct me if I'm wrong, but if you cook in a cast iron skillet, don't you get some iron in your system? Doesn't it?
You do. Actually, there have been studies done on that where it actually increases the iron level in your system.
Yeah. So cast iron skillets are good to cook in.
Now, here are some actual smaller items for cooking that you want to have in your pantry.
I think we can all agree that to be able to start a fire is something very important. So we recommend these.
I don't know. I call them like long fire starter thingies. There's a real name for them. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah, well,
they do.
they work good.
We actually. And if you get really bored, look. You can pretend like they're lightsabers. You can have duels. Just saying.
I don't know if that's very safe or not. But I will tell you this. We have a gas stove, and sometimes the pilot light does not light the burners as fast as we would like. So we'll use this to light those burners. We also use them with our kerosene heaters. And if you have a Coleman lantern, this is great for lighting those, but you want to burn that outside, of course. So many, many uses for these.
You can actually have smaller disposable lighters on hand as well. Those are handy. We have a few of those around the house. We called them cigarette lighters, right, when we were kids. Everybody remember children of the 70s and 80s. Do you remember going to concerts? I was telling my kids this. We didn't have cell phones, so we had our lighters, and we swayed with our lighters in concerts.
Oh boy.
It's true. You also want to have some kitchen matches on hand. Safety matches are great. If you can get the waterproof ones, those are even better. Aluminum foil, something else with lots of uses. You might want to have that on hand.
Heat-proof gloves are really good, and these particular gloves have kind of a sticky surface, and so whatever you grab onto, you're holding a really hot pan. These are going to get a really good purchase on that item.
You do not want to try to use the traditional cloth, like those mitts that you use for baking. You don't want to use those. You want to use these because these will take higher heat without your hands getting burned. The other great thing about this, guys, Father's Day is just around the corner, so you're going to find these on sale right now. So go ahead and look there. Anything that is related to like outdoor type grilling, you're going to find on sale right now. And the other thing you want to do is wait just a few weeks after Father's Day is over. When it gets toward the end of the summer, that's also when you're going to find all of these type items on clearance.
In case you need to grill outside, let's say power's off and you can't use your electric stove. Of course, a grill is great, but you got to make sure that you have plenty of charcoal or LP gas, depending on what it runs on.
And you might also want to have some sort of a grill that you can put over the top of your fire pit to use your fire pit and cook over your fire pit as well. This is one more extra thing when it comes to cooking. It's not necessarily something that you're going to have in your pantry, but we felt it, worthwhile actually mentioning again. This is something that we use for cooking, and we shared it with you in a recent video.
Yeah, we have a solar oven that was made. We actually made this. Our sons had a 4-H project years ago, and so we assembled a solar oven. It's very handy. It works more like a slow cooker, like a crock pot, but once again, a very handy item to have.
And we're going to make sure that we link that video up above and in the description of this video in case you want to take a look at it. We're going to move along to the next section we'll talk about, and that is personal care items.
Shampoo and conditioner.
Laundry detergent, have a little extra on hand. We're not saying that you have to stockpile enough for a year or 2 years. We're just reminding you this is a great time to check to see how much of these items you have on hand, and do you want to go ahead right now and purchase another couple of them so you have enough to get by for a while. Bar soap, we mentioned this in a recent video. When you get bar soap, unwrap it, take it out of the wrapper, let it dry out. Bar soap that is dried out will last longer.
Another item would be bug spray, and along with bug spray, sunscreen.
Baking soda. Baking soda has a multitude of uses, and you're going to see a couple of these items like baking soda and vinegar. They're going to show up in several of the different sections that we're talking about today. But baking soda is in this section because it can be used in lieu of shampoo.
Vinegar has many uses. You can rinse your hair with it. It'll make it nice and shiny. It removes chemical residue from your hair and your scalp.
Dental floss, once again, one of those things with a multitude of uses. As we go through all of these 60 items that we're going to share with you today, we would love to know what are the items that you actually think are super important to have in your emergency pantry that are non-food items. Any items that we missed, tell us about it in the comments section.
Of course, you'll want extra toothpaste in your pantry.
And extra toilet paper. Sorry, guys, I had to add it. Now, we all know that toilet paper is not an absolute necessity of life, But you know what? It was just too much of like a weird flashback to the early days of 2020. We had to put it in there to stock up on your toilet paper.
It became kind of a major item a couple of years ago, didn't it? I had to laugh at some of that because there are alternatives to using toilet paper that don't cost an awful lot of money, and you can get by without it. They did for thousands of years.
Really? One more extra thing. The extras we're adding are things that I really thought were important. They're not necessarily something you're going to put in your pantry area. A wide-brimmed hat. If you're going to be in a situation where you're spending a lot more time in the sun than you generally do, having something to cover your head with a wide brim, super important.
Let's move on to cleaning supplies.
I told you there were a couple of items that are going to show up several different times. Here they are, vinegar and baking soda. They're great base ingredients to use for DIY cleaners.
Bleach is a very good item to have on hand. Right now, I'm using a lot of it in a room that I'm cleaning up.
Hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide will kill viruses.
Rags. Have them pre-cut and sorted.
Now, this, of course, is not necessarily something that you're even going to have to purchase to put in your emergency area. But whenever like a t-shirt or something like that wears out, in lieu of just throwing it out in the garbage, cut it up into small squares and just sort them by, I like to sort them by material type. So if it's more of a cotton material, I put it in one area. And if it's something that's going to be very absorbent, I put that in like a different place. But yeah, I always have pre-sorted, pre-cut rags on hand and ready to use.
When my shirts get to be like 20 years old, then they become rags. You know, it's a great
Before
rag.
that, if I find them.
A great rag is an old towel or an old washcloth. They make great dusting cloths. And I use old towels to wipe the cars off when I wash them.
And even old socks, you got single socks. The other one got sucked down into the weird monster that lives in the dryer that nobody knows is there. They just know it lives there because it steals socks and you wind up with single socks. Keep your single socks. You can put them over your hand and use them for dusting rags. They're great. All right. One more thing in the cleaning area that we like. We love this product.
Oh, yeah.
All right, here, Larry's going to hold it up.
I use these daily, and that's the Scotch Brite pads, and we get these from Sam's. This is a kind of a, I guess you call it the large.
I know, it's the industrial size package for people like us who use them all the time. I got to be honest, guys. We've used Scotch Brite for years and years, and we honestly haven't found anything that we like better. If you found something you like as well as Scotch Brite, let us know.
And let me give you a little tip of my own on these. You probably do this too, but I'll cut this in half, then I'll cut that in half again. I'll actually cut them down to little small squares, and we'll use that for when we're washing dishes. Much easier, lasts a lot longer that way.
Now we're going to move on to the first aid type section. We're going to mention some herbal remedies, things like that. This was because we actually had a viewer who requested that I do this. I'm going to tell you a couple of things before we move on. One, I'm going to be really careful with how I talk about it, because whenever you mention natural remedies, then videos that mention natural remedies tend to be demonetized a little more often. They also tend to be censored a little bit more often. I want to make sure that I'm very general in what I tell you about these products. The second thing you need to understand is whenever you use a natural product, you have to consider it a medication. Anything that you use may impact other medications that you are regularly taking, and you have to check with your medical professional before you institute the use of that, particularly if you're going to use it in any sort of a regular rotation in your life. But you need to know that ahead of time. So remember, we're not doctors.
No.
We are not. So don't take anything we say in lieu of medical advice. Always check with your medical professional. Having said that, we do have a list that we are prepared to give you. First aid.
Okay, so first thing on the list, it would be pain relievers, and that would be ibuprofen. That would be ibuprofen,
Yeah, you know what it is. That stuff. Motrin, Tylenol.
Yeah,
Advil.
and acetaminophen.
Yeah, you got that. Awesome. All right, good job. All right, I get the easier one to say next. Over-the-counter medications.
Wow, you did that so well.
Thank you. Anything that you use regularly, make sure you got it on hand.
Band-Aids, of course, are very handy.
Baking soda, there it shows up again. Baking soda is great for mixing with a little bit of water to make a poultice out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it draws out poisons. Hydrogen peroxide, a great cleanser. That'll cleanse a wound. It's really good. And it's pretty gentle, really. It doesn't sting or anything, so good to use.
Rubbing alcohol, super handy to have on hand.
Epsom salt. We got a couple of them here.
Yeah, we do. So I wanted to show these. I got these from Big Lots for, I think they were under $2. They were about $1.95 each. Epsom salts are fantastic for, like, if you have achy joints, if you have achy muscles, things like that. These are great, especially if you've been sick, you've had a fever for a while. Soak in a tub with some Epsom salts in it. And this is eucalyptus scented. You can add a little essential oil if you want, if you get the plain ones. And this one is green tea and chamomile scented. Very, very inexpensive and super handy to have on hand.
And of course, as kind of a blend of some of these things, a good first aid kit is handy to have. And it's good to have one of these in your car, too.
Now, here is a precaution that you may not actually think of. We have several first aid kits, actually. And we have occasionally used items from the first aid kits. You have to remember to periodically inventory what is still left in the first aid kit. You don't want to open it and think, oh, I know that I have XYZ, whatever, in this first aid kit, and you've actually used it and forgot to replenish it in the first aid kit. So kind of make a schedule, maybe even a couple of times a year, that you go through and just double check the items that are still in the first aid kit.
And you might just replace old medicines that you might have in there too, that might be out of date.
Vaseline, lots and lots of uses for Vaseline. Witch hazel, it's very, very cooling and is fantastic to use on hemorrhoids.
Cotton balls to apply to items on your skin. A sling is good. If you're spraying your arm or have something that goes on there, you've got something to kind of retain it.
And they're inexpensive, $10, $15 for a sling, maybe $20 if you want to get like the fancy schmancy sling or something. But by the way, some of these things, if we feel like this is something you're going to want to maybe purchase, like the sling, we'll have links to these from Amazon. We'll have the links in the description of the video.
Any regular prescriptions that you have on hand, you want to make sure that you have plenty. It's recommended that you have a 90-day supply, but your insurance may not allow for that. Mine does not. Mine only allows for a 30-day supply.
Check with your insurance and check with your doctor. If you're on a 30-day supply of your medications, especially right now, doctors would be probably willing to rewrite the prescription unless there's a good reason they can't for a 90-day supply, and you can get that.
There's several vitamins that we have on hand that we like to take regularly. That would be vitamin C, vitamin D, and B12.
B12, of course, because we don't eat meat or dairy. Zinc, super handy to have on hand. It does shorten the length and the severity of colds.
Lysine is an item that I don't think a lot of people think a whole lot about. I didn't know anything about it until Hope got me onto this. But if you have a cold sore and you put a Lysine tablet in your mouth and kind of let it rest on that, boy, that'll take that out in no time. So Lysine, very handy item to have. And you'll find that in your vitamin area, your vitamin section at your, well, what is it? Grocery store, drugstore?
Drugstore, any of those places.
Yeah.
Any place that commonly you would purchase
A vitamin
supplements or vitamins from will have lysine on hand. Lysine is an essential amino acid, guys, but your body doesn't make it naturally. And it's good for like a variety of different things. Magnesium, also a really good thing to have on hand.
Aloe is really good for burns. In fact, we used to have an aloe
We had
plant.
2 aloe plants. They're really hard to kill, but apparently even I can kill them. I would love a new aloe plant. So
Okay.
Major hint there. I would love to have a new aloe plant. They really are really easy to grow. They're a desert plant, so they do well in my house because I tend to forget to water them for long lengths of time.
Yeah. Apple cider vinegar. That is another very handy item. And I think I've mentioned this in a previous video, but this will take a wart off of you if you soak a Band-Aid with some of this. I usually take a section of toilet paper and fold it all up and then put that on the Band-Aid, put it on the cap and just soak that a little, put it on the wart, and this will take it off.
Needs to be raw. It needs to be unfiltered. It needs to have the mother. Those are the 3 things you need to look for with good apple cider vinegar. Raw, unfiltered, with the mother. Arnica Gel. Arnica is a plant. If you grow it, it has really pretty flowers. It's also very, very poisonous to ingest. So never ingest any part of an arnica plant. But Arnica is made into a gel, and it's very, very helpful with sprains and bruises and muscle aches and things like that. I love to have it on hand. In fact, I did a little bit of research for y'all. There's a link to a specific Arnica gel in the description of the video. It's 98% Arnica gel, and people have raved about that particular strength of gel. So I'm going to make sure there's a link in the video description. We're going to swing in and dip our toe briefly into the waters of essential oils, herbs, and spices. We'll talk just a little bit first about tinctures. So if you're going to have the actual herb or spice on hand, whether it's the fresh version or the dried version, you're probably going to use it to actually make something that you will use for first aid purposes. If you're going to make a tincture or a salve or a poultice, here are some things that are super important to have on hand. Baking soda, very useful in making tinctures and also poultices. Activated charcoal, it will draw poisons out of your system. Bentonite Clay. This is a natural clay product, great for making poultices. It also helps to draw out toxins and poisons. Beeswax, this stuff is great. You can melt it, mix it with some coconut oil. It makes a very smooth type salve. It's semi-hardened, so you're able to make a salve that you can rub into your skin and rub on wounds.
80 proof hard liquor is good also for making tinctures.
Anything 80 proof or above, 80 to 120 proof alcohol. You can go all the way up to moonshine, guys. We like to use vodka as the base for our tinctures, but you can use anything vodka or above. Just make sure it's 80 proof or more.
And in order to store tinctures, they store better in dark glass bottles like this one. Looks like you paid $2.49 for that one. And here is another one for some salves, right?
Yeah, that's great for salves.
Yeah.
The reason for the dark glass, the colored glass, is that direct sunlight tends to degrade the value of the tincture or the salve. So you just want to make sure that you store it in dark glass.
Medicine droppers are also very good for applying small amounts of liquid where it needs to go.
Let's get into some specifics, our top 10 essential oils, herbs, and spices.
Mint is an antispasmodic. It's good for stomach aches. It makes you feel more alert. It actually has many uses.
It's an antispasmodic, so it's also really good for like headaches, that kind of thing. Chamomile, it reduces anxiety. That's why anytime you get like a tea formula that's like sleeping time tea, it's going to have chamomile in it because it relaxes you and helps you to sleep better at night.
Turmeric is a very good anti-inflammatory, and it's good for skin conditions.
Elderberry supports your immune system and helps to shorten a sickness.
Echinacea also supports your immune system, and it's often used to treat head colds.
It's generally used when your system is already under attack, though. Echinacea is not one of those herbs that you're going to use like if you've been around somebody who's sick, but you're not feeling sick. You're not going to use it like as preventative medicine. It's something you use for short term, 10 days, 7 to 10 days at the most, and use it when your system's already under attack.
Lavender is something that's better used at night. It helps you to sleep better, and it soothes skin irritations.
Tea tree oil, it's good for like pretty much everything. Get tea tree oil, okay? Have it on hand. It's got antiseptic qualities. It's good for pretty much all kinds of stuff.
Plantain can be worked into a poultice, and it works really good against bug bites.
Plantain is actually something, tell me if you have plantain in your yard. A bunch of you are going to say yes in the comment section. Plantain is a broadleaf, grassy type thing, grows in lawns, and people tend to pick it, feeling like it's like this invasive weed. It's actually super, super helpful, and it will reduce the pain and inflammation instantly when you put it on a bee sting or a bug bite.
Bay leaves are used to add a little extra flavor to cooking, but did you know they can also be used to repel bugs? You put them in grain that's packaged like in a Ziploc bag, and that will keep your grain mostly bug-free, if not completely.
Cloves, you want to have cloves on hand. You can have whole cloves, or you can go ahead and get the powdered cloves. Cloves are great for tooth pain and pain in your mouth.
Well, let's move on now to some general items that you will want to have in your pantry.
These did not fit in any section, but we wanted to make sure that we added them because we thought they were all super important.
Duct tape is good for anything. Just ask Red Green.
Duct tape. You want to have duct tape on hand, all right? Rope, twine, nylon string, anything like that. Those are great things to have on hand and just set aside because you never know when you're going to need them.
Glue, and there's so many different kinds of glue. You got Gorilla Glue and Super Glue, and you've even got hot glue. So there's just so many different kinds. Glue comes in handy for so many things. And if you want to go a little step above glue, epoxy is a little stronger. It's more of a chemical bond. That's an excellent item to have.
Here's another item that is the extra. This is so each of our areas had kind of an extra item I thought was important, and this is not going to fit in your pantry area either, but make sure you have a couple of good sized tarps on hand.
WD-40 is probably one of the most common items that probably might be out in your garage or in your workspace. There are so many different uses for WD-40. Do you know it can be used, for instance, for cleaning stainless steel? Of course, you can use it for lubricating. It's great for getting, if you have a lock that's not working very good and it's kind of bound up, it'll free that up. A lot of good uses for WD-40. It is kind of a light oil and it can leave a gum residue. So you want to be careful how you apply it to really sensitive metals and objects. You wouldn't want to use it, for instance, to oil a fine watch.
Larry seriously loves WD-40, guys. All right, there's one thing that we have not yet mentioned that we find probably the most important thing. We haven't talked about it yet. Can I do my drum roll and then you can tell them what it is?
Go for it.
My drum roll. It is?
The most important thing that you need on hand is a list that tells you where you have these items stored. Because when you're going to want to find these items, usually you're in a hurry, maybe the lights are out, there's some kind of a circumstance going on where you need to be able to find these items quickly and simply. So know where these items are, or better yet, have a list available, maybe on the back of a kitchen cupboard door or something that gives you the roadmap into where they're at.
Speaking of the lights going out, we did a video a while back, guys, that gave you our list of products that we have on hand just in case the lights go out for a period of time. It's right over there. Give it a watch if you haven't seen it yet.